What's up, y'all? This is Nick with From the Ground Up DIY, and today I'm going to show you all how to build a handmade table. I mean, literally, it's a handmade table. Let's get into it. So the idea of the handmade table came to be because somebody who we're not going to name ended up knocking over a studio light, which hit the table and broke the glass, and that somebody who we're not going to name has to now make a new table to replace this one. For the new table, I wanted to design a table that's unique and out of the box, and after thinking on it for a little while, I decided that it would be a great idea to actually make a table that's actually shaped like a hand. And after doing a little bit of research, I didn't see any designs that's going to be how I plan on making this table, and I also didn't see anybody record the process of making a table that's actually shaped like a hand. So I think this video will be really helpful for anybody who's trying to do so, and hopefully I'm the first one to do so. The first thing that I need to do for this project is to actually make a template for the handmade table, and to do this I'm going to be using a sheet of 1/8 inch plywood underlayment that I had from a previous project, and I'm going to use this sheet to actually draw the shape of the hand, and I can actually cut this out and then use the hand shape as a reference for later on in the project. After cutting a straight edge on my sheet of plywood by using my track saw, I went ahead and pulled out my tape measure so that I can determine what length I want the table to be. And after doing a little bit of measuring, I decided I want the table to be 5 feet long and approximately 4 feet wide. I finished cutting the plywood using my track saw, and now it's time for me to throw my artist hat on so that I can actually draw the shape of the hand. Before we get deep into it, I just want to let y'all guys know that when it comes to drawing art, I am not the best at it, and it actually took me a pretty good while to actually draw this hand out. But to start off, I went on Google first and found a picture of a hand that I like, and I'll be using this picture as a reference to draw my hand for the table. So the best way I found to start drawing the hand was to start with the middle finger and work my way out. So the first thing I did was use my Drywall T-Square so that I could draw a line to establish the center point of the middle finger. And from here, I just use a combination of my T-square and also my circle template so that I can go ahead and draw the middle finger and the index finger. And my main objective here was just to find a good width for the fingers, because I didn't want the fingers to be too skinny, but I also didn't want them to be too big. So here I was just trying to find a good balance between the two. Once I had my final measurements established for the middle finger and index finger, I repeated the same process so I could go ahead and draw the ring finger and pinky finger. And when drawing all these fingers, I made sure that I kept even spacing between the fingers. And from here, I was starting to get a basic shape of the hand. And all I need to do now is just to draw the thumb, and then I'll be almost done with drawing the hand. While trying to measure out the thumb, I noticed that I wasn't going to have any space to draw the thumb on this sheet of plywood, and that was due to where I started the location of the hand at. So I went ahead and grabbed the excess sheet of plywood that I had cut off from this sheet, and I put that side by side with the hand so that I can go ahead and draw the thumb out. Drawing the thumb out wasn't too bad, but when drawing the thumb, you gotta make sure you're aware of your distances, because from the left side of the hand all the way to the right tip of the thumb, you gotta make sure that this width is no more than 4 feet, because if it's more than 4 feet, the hand is not gonna be able to fit on a full sheet of plywood, and you'll end up having 2 pieces for it. But for this hand, you wanna make sure that it's in one whole piece, so just make sure you're aware of your distances when drawing. Believe it or not, guys, the hardest part of drawing this hand was drawing the curves from the end of the index finger going into the thumb, and also drawing the curve from the end of the pinky finger going into the end of the hand. And drawing these curves was hard for me because when I would step back from the hand just to get an overall look, the hand was looking too straight looking, if you get what I mean. And I wanted the hand to have a more natural look, like an actual hand. So after spending about 2 hours just working on the curves around the edges of the hand and also around the fingers, so the overall hand can have a more natural look, I was finally done with the template, and I could go ahead and get this bad boy cut out. To cut this template out, I'll be using my jigsaw, and as always, I like to take it nice and slow with the jigsaw so that I can stay straight on my line in order to make sure that this hand is cut out nice and evenly. After getting most of the template cut out, I almost forgot about the tip of the thumb, so I went ahead and cut that piece out as well. To attach the tip of the thumb to the rest of the hand, I used some Scotch package tape that I had laying around in my house, and this will be fine for the template because I'll just be using this template just to trace the shape onto my final sheets of plywood. As you can see on the template, there are a few rough edges that need to be addressed, and to address these I went ahead and grabbed some sandpaper so that I could smooth over the rough edges that came from me cutting with the jigsaw. Now that the template is nice and smooth, I can proceed with tracing and cutting out the final hands for this table. The material that I'll be using to cut out the final hands are these 1/2 inch sheets of sanded plywood, and my plan is to trace and cut out 3 separate hands which I plan on gluing together, and I feel like this will give the handmade table a nice thickness and depth. As you can see here, the hand template fits almost exactly between the 4-foot margin I was talking about earlier, and that's why I was putting so much emphasis on it. But once I had the hand template clamped down, I went ahead and traced the shape out. I repeated the same process to cut this hand out as I did with the template, just making sure that I stay on my line and making sure that I take it nice and slow. So the only part that I didn't cut out with the jigsaw was the grooves between the fingers, and I decided to skip these because it was hard for me to stay on the line due to the tight radius of the curve. But instead of using my jigsaw, I decided that it would be better to use my plunge router with a straight cut bit, and by using my router I was able to stay right on the curve and my grooves came out looking neat. After getting that first hand cut out good, I repeated the same process to cut out 2 more hands, and once I had all 3 hands cut out, I went ahead and stacked them on top of each other. And for this, I gotta hand it to myself, I did pretty good with cutting with the jigsaw because sometimes my cuts can be a little wild, but with this I did pretty good. By cutting each of the hands individually, I already assumed that the hands were not going to align exactly even with each other, as you can see here. But to fix this, I went ahead and clapped the hands together, and then I used a combination of my jigsaw, my orbital sander, and I also had to do some hand sanding so that I could cut and sand the edges of the hands together as evenly as possible so that it will be good enough for the glue up that I plan on doing later on. I also had some uneven spots between the fingers that needed sanding as well, and for these spots it was hard for me to hand sand these because it would take too long and my orbital sander couldn't fit in between the fingers, so I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on getting the Dremel. And for the Dremel, it's a rotary tool and it comes with these small sanding heads, and with this I'm able to get in between the fingers and also hit the rough spots on some of the edges where it just took too long to sand with the orbital sander as well. And I really like this tool and it came real in handy for what I was doing. Now that the hands are pretty even with each other, I went ahead and took the clamps off, and now I can go ahead and prepare for the glue up. To glue these hands together, I use Titebond original wood glue, and for this glue up it was really a pain, and that's because of the wood glue I was using. And for this wood glue, it's been sitting in my shed for a while, so when it was time for me to actually use it, it was globbing up on me. As you can see here, it's just really hard for me to move it around, and I was rushing trying to get the glue spread out before it dried up. I posted a video of this glue up on my Instagram, and I had a friend recommend that I should have used construction adhesive instead of wood glue, and I completely agree because with the construction adhesive you'll be able to spread it around better and you don't have to worry about it drying up on you. So if you're doing a project like this, I recommend the construction adhesive over the wood glue. After getting the first 2 hands glued up and clamped together, I let the hands sit in the clamp for about an hour, and then I came back outside and repeated the same process so I can get the last hand glued on there. And once all the hands were glued together, I let this sit for about 3 to 4 hours, and when I came back out, the glue up was pretty much finished. During the glue up, I was only able to put clamps around the edges of the hand, but to make sure that the middle of the hand had a tight bond as well, I went ahead and drove in a few wood screws in the middle of the fingers and also in the middle of the hand, just to make sure that the middle had a tight bond. With all the wood screws in place, I went ahead and did a little bit more sanding after that just to make sure that all the hands were even, and now it's time for me to work on the base for this table. For the base of the table, I'm actually going to be using this small end table that I found on Amazon. And this end table is the Christopher Knight Homes Jerod lightweight concrete accent table, and the color of this one is natural. I was a little skeptical at first about using this for the base of the table because the table is pretty long and this end table has a small blueprint. So I was worried that if I had the hand on the end table that it will end up tipping over. But after doing a little bit more thinking, I decided that if it did end up tipping over, I can just buy another end table and then I can just use 2 of those for the base, and I feel like that'll still add the unique look that I'm looking for. After getting the end table unpacked, I went ahead and set it on the floor, and then I set my hand on top of the end table. And here I'm just moving the hand around so that I can find the center of gravity so that the hand will be balanced on the end table. And once I found the center of gravity, I went ahead and pulled out my tape measure so I can just make sure that the end table was in the center of the hand. Once I found that sweet gushy spot, I went ahead and traced around the base of the end table so I know where to place it back when it's time to glue it up. After tracing that spot out, I went ahead and put the hand on the end table one more time just to make sure that it was balanced, and I lined it up with the spot that I traced out. And here you can see that I'm standing on the table, and I'm pretty sure that I'll be the heaviest thing that I'll ever be on this table, so I think we're good to go. And I was tired at this point, y'all, from doing all that crawling, but the show must go on. The next day, I was back outside with it, and for the end table, I don't want to glue it directly to the bottom of the hand, and I think it would be better for me to use my router to cut out an insert so that the end table will be able to sit inside the hand, and I think that this will make the table way more sturdy. Before cutting out the insert, I have a few screws that I need to remove that's in the area where the base is going to be at, so I went ahead and grabbed my drill and went ahead and removed these screws because I want to make sure that I don't hit them with my router bit when I'm cutting out the insert. The depth of the base will be from the top of the base to this lower corner before it tapers off, so I went ahead and put my plunge router on top so that I could plunge down and set this depth. And once I had the depth set, I went ahead and threw my hoodie on so that I could go ahead and get this insert cut out. I did a quick test fit to see if the base was going to fit in the insert, and on this first go around it didn't quite fit, so I used my router again to go along the edges, and when I tried it the second time I was able to get it on in there. Before I glue the base to the table, the base actually needs a new paint job, and to do this I'll be using this Rustoleum stone textured spray paint. And this spray paint is supposed to actually look like stone, and from the pictures I've seen of people using it online, that seems to be the case, so I'm really excited about giving it a try. Before applying the spray paint, I actually need to clean the base of the table because it's been outside and in the shed, so it had a little bit of dust on it. But to clean it off, I use some dish detergent and a wet paper towel just to get it all washed up, and then I use a regular towel to dry it off. After getting the base all nice and clean, I went ahead and pulled out some sandpaper so that I could sand all around the base so I can make sure that when it's time to spray paint, that the spray paint will adhere good to the surface. With all the sanding done, it was time for me to get my spray on. And for this spray paint, you want to make sure that you shake it up real well before you start. And since this is a textured spray paint, you got to spray it in layers. So a layer for me was just doing one whole side. So here you see every time I spray, I'm overlapping. And once I got done with one side, I let that side dry for about 10 minutes before I spray some more. And I repeat this process just going all the way around. And this is how far one can of spray paint will get you, which sucked for me because this was the only can I had, so I had to go on Amazon and unfortunately order some more. In the meantime, while I waited for the new cans of spray paint to get here, I went ahead and glued the base to the hand. And once I had it glued down, I went ahead and grabbed a hammer and a towel so that I can hit the corners so I can make sure that the base was snugged in the hand. Once I had the hand snugged onto the base, I quickly realized that I didn't have any clamps that would fit around the hand due to the size of the hand. So instead of using clamps, I went ahead and grabbed some weights I had laying around and put those in the center of the hand, and hopefully this will be enough pressure to keep the hand glued down to the base. I let the weights sit on the table overnight so that the glue can dry, but I came out the next morning and removed the weights, and as you can see here as I'm lifting up the table, you can see that the hand is glued pretty good to the base, but like when you pull like real tight on the base, you can see that it moves away from the hand. So to fix this, I went ahead and drove a few wood screws in the corners of the base and also in the middle from the top of the hand. And I did this just to make sure that the base is truly secure to the hand. After getting the base secured, I used some joint compound to fill in the screw holes on top of the hand. And I know some of you guys are about to freak out and be like, Nick, why are you using joint compound to fill in the screw holes on top of the hand? Hey, you gotta chill, there's methods to the madness. But let me explain. Back when I first had the idea of making this table, I had saw a few TikToks of people doing textured art, and I thought this would be a great idea to do on the handmade table. This was my first time doing any type of textured art, so before doing the textured art on the hand, I wanted to do a sample piece so I can get some practice in with it. So for my sample piece, I just used a scrap piece of plywood and I cut that into a square, and then I used some joint compound and I spread it all on the face of the board. And then I went ahead and bought these cake scrapers off of Amazon, and I used these to make my design. So this right here is my first design, and I really didn't like this one because the lines were too skinny. So I went ahead and just spread the joint compound back out flat, and then I went ahead and did the second design, which I like much better. And for this one, I just used a different cake spreader that had larger teeth, and I really like how these wavy lines look, and this is the look that I'm looking to do on the handmade table. After I finished this design, I let the joint compound dry for about 24 hours, and this is what it looked like the next day. And as you can see here, the joint compound got pretty hard, and there was only 2 little places where it cracked at, so all in all, the sample piece came out well. I wanted to give my sample piece a little pop of color, so I went ahead and got this timeless gray satin acrylic paint, and I just used this to paint over the joint compound, and this was really the look that I was trying to get, because since the base was like a black stone, I wanted the top to be like a concrete color, so it can have like that stone concrete contrast, and I felt like that would have been a dope look for this table. Since my sample piece came out good, I was ready to start the texture art on the hand, but before I started that, my 2 cans of spray paint finally came in the mail, so I went ahead and finished spray painting the base with the stone spray paint. I'm really impressed with how the stone spray paint came out, because after using that first can, I didn't think the spray paint was going to have that stone texture look it said it was going to have. But after using 2 more cans of the spray paint, it really did cover the base good, and now the base really does look like stone. Now that the table base is looking good, I can go ahead and tackle the texture art for the hand. And since my sample piece went so well, I thought doing this hand was going to be smooth and be easy. But boy oh boy, I was wrong. I decided to start the texture art on the back of the hand first because I wanted to get a feel for what I was doing, so that when it was time to do the front of the hand, which is the most important part, I'll be able to do it more efficiently. I started to place the joint compound on the back of the hand, and while I was placing the joint compound, I quickly noticed that it was drying up faster than when I was working with my sample piece, and I think this was happening because I was outside and then the sun was shining directly on it as well. After noticing this, I quickly started to place the joint compound so that I can get the hand covered, but unfortunately, once I got done spreading all the joint compound and it was time for me to make the wavy lines, the joint compound I placed at the beginning was pretty much dried up and it was starting to crack as well. And I tried to use my spreader to try to spread it, but it seemed like the more I would try to spread it, the more it would crack. Due to the time I had left to work on this project and also my lack of experience with working with texture art, I decided to ditch this idea for now, but I definitely plan on trying it later in the future. And I think I'm gonna do it on a smaller furniture project first and then work my way up to something big like this. But please let me know in the comments of what you think I could have did better, or if I did something wrong, and we can talk about it down below, and I'll really appreciate it. Now that most of the joint compound was scraped off the hand, I went ahead and grabbed my orbital sander so I could sand any more joint compound that was still on the hand. And then I went and grabbed some of my Bondo wood filler and mixed some of that together so that I could cover any screw holes that was on the back of the hand. And I also filled in any spots that was on the front of the hand as well. I let the wood filler dry for about an hour or two, but after that I went ahead and used my orbital sander again just to go over these spots, and now the hand is looking back to normal. I was a little disappointed that my texture art idea didn't go as planned, but I was still eager to achieve that concrete look that I was looking for initially. And in order to do this, I actually found some of the stone spray paint in a different color, and I think that this is going to do the trick. Before I spray any new spray paint, I need to go ahead and get the table base cover up so that I don't get anything on that. So I use some painter's tape and some plastic to get it all covered up. This is the new spray paint that I'm going to be using, and the color of this is gray stone. And I just wanted to show you guys this so you can have an idea of what the hand is going to look like. Before doing any spray painting, I took care of any last minute sanding that I had to do, and I also used a towel to wipe off any dust that was on the table. The same methods that I used to spray paint the table base, I used to spray paint the front and the back of the hand, and I just took it layer by layer, y'all. I would spray paint one layer, wait about 10 minutes, and then move on to the next layer. And it took me a little while to cover both the front and the back of the hand, but I eventually got it done. But while I'm doing all this spray painting, if you enjoyed the video so far and I provided any type of value towards you, I greatly appreciate if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. By this point, guys, I done used about 6 cans of the gray spray paint on the hand. I used 3 cans for the front of the hand and then 3 cans on the back. And I ended up having to order 3 more cans because, as you can see here, it might be hard to see in the video, but there are still a few spots where you can see the plywood, and these spots need to be covered. So I used 1 more whole can on the front and then 1 more whole can on the back. And then I just had an extra can left in case there was any other spots that I needed to touch up. After making sure that the front and the back of the hand was completely covered, I decided that for my protective finish, I was going to use spray-on lacquer. And this is my first time using any type of lacquer at all, so I went ahead and grabbed my sample piece from earlier and sprayed a layer of the stone spray paint on it so that I could test the spray-on lacquer. And I just want to make sure that this is the right protective finish for the table. After letting the stone spray paint dry on the sample board, I proceeded with applying the spray on lacquer. And for the spray on lacquer, after you spray a coat, you gotta wait 2 hours in between before you can apply the next coat. And this is what the sample board was looking like after I sprayed that first coat and let it dry on up. While spraying the lacquer, I decided that it was a good time to partake in a cigar, and I started smoking cigars a few months ago as a hobby, and the cigar I'm smoking today is the Romeo y Julieta Devotion. Once I got to the lower third of the cigar, I decided to go ahead and take off the label, and as I was taking off the label, I saw that it was a message inside, and the message says, good night, parting is such sweet sorrow, that I should say good night till it be morrow. I like this little poem, so this will be the message of the day. And to me, the message means that you don't want the night to end. So I guess if you're out with some friends or out with a significant other, or maybe just having fun in general, you just want the night to keep on going because you're having so much fun. And since this poem is on this label, which is on the cigar, I'm assuming they're saying that the cigar is so good that you don't want it to end. And I can see why they have this poem inside this label on this cigar. But down in the comments, let me know what y'all think the message of the day means, and if you do, I'll make sure to prioritize your comment first. Before spraying any lacquer on the table, I went ahead and removed the painter's tape and plastic that was covering the table base, and I started by spraying 1 coat of lacquer over the base first, and then I proceeded to spray the back of the hand. While moving the table, I accidentally chipped one of the fingers, but to fix this spot, I went ahead and used some of the stone spray paint and just sprayed some on a Q-tip, and then I did a little dabby dab action, and now you can't even tell the difference. After spraying those coats of lacquer, I let it dry for about 2 hours before I came back and sprayed another coat on the back of the hand and also the base. And one thing I forgot to tell you guys earlier is that I used 11 cans of the stone spray paint to get this table covered. I used 8 cans of the gray spray paint and then 3 cans of the black spray paint, and this was way more than I planned on using, and it ended up being a tad bit expensive. I think I spent almost $200 just on spray paint. So if you decide to do this project, just make sure you're prepared. I was able to get the top of the hand covered with 2 coats of lacquer as well, and I think after that the lacquer was almost finished up, so the whole table is coated with 2 coats of the lacquer. And with that being said, y'all, the handmade table is all finished. The last thing I had to do was to deliver the handmade table over to my girlfriend's place, and then she did her thing with the decorations. But what can I say, y'all? This table looks amazing, and I'm just glad that I was able to make something so unique that was able to replace the coffee table that I broke at the beginning of this video. This was the most fun I had making a project in a while, and I love being able to test my creativity and being able to make something unique that's out of the box and out of the norm. And I just want to thank you guys for watching this video, because a lot of work went into making this hand. It took a whole lot of hours and also a whole bunch of time actually editing this video. So I appreciate each one of you who take your time to watch this video, and I hope you got something positive from it, and I hope it gave you some type of value. But with all that being said, you guys, if you don't already, make sure that you follow me on social media. I got all my social media linked down below. But with that being said, you guys, peace, love, many blessings, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.